Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another video. As y'all know, it's a heat wave going on right now. It's fucking hot. It's sweaty balls out here. I do have a fan. My fan is on behind me. It's right behind me. It's on high speed. So you guys will probably hear it. And I got the A shirt on. It's hot. So I only have one light on. Normally I turn on two, but I only have one light on. That's why it kind of looks like the light is just on one side of my face, but it's really hot. So, but I did want to try and film this video. So if you're watching this video, that means I got through the video without passing out of a heat stroke. This video is going to be on house music. House music is kind of having a moment right now. And so I just wanted to do a video talking about house music because I'm really familiar with house music. As everybody knows, I grew up in DC, and there is a house music culture there because of Baltimore house music. So I grew up listening to Baltimore house music. It's, like I said, it's not something that like ever went out of style for me. House music is really interesting. I'm just going to say this really quick and then I'm going to rewind. But house music is really interesting in that it sort of had a mainstream moment. It was invented in the 80s and it had like a mainstream moment really in the 90s, like in the late 80s and in the 90s, super mainstream. And then it kind of like, I'm going to say went underground, but in certain cities like Baltimore, like Washington, D.C., like Chicago, like New Jersey, people never stopped listening to house music and they never stopped making house music, and the sound kind of continued to evolve. And then I'd say like in the early 2000s, house music, especially like techno house, made a resurgence and became really, really popular again, like sort of house electro pop music. And then it kind of like went away again, but again, like not in the cities that have like a prominent house culture. House was continuing to grow and evolve and be made, and now it's kind of like coming back again into the mainstream. So Drake just surprise dropped an album, which is basically a house album. Beyonce just dropped a new song with Big Freedia, which is also a house song. I also want to point out that on Ungodly Hour by Chloe and Halle, the title track, Ungodly Hour, is a house song. And y'all know that was my jam. And you guys know how I feel about Drake. I will post a link to my Genius roundtable talk on Drake being a culture vulture. But I did hear, so I did not listen, y'all know I didn't listen to that album, but I did hear that Azealia Banks, who I might call the queen of contemporary house music, because Azealia Banks has always been doing house music her entire career. I did hear that Azealia Banks was on the album, which made me really, really happy, because like Azealia Banks is really like, she's always been doing house music. She's never stopped doing house music. And so it's nice to see her like on a major release doing that. So, but we're going to get a little bit into the history of house music. So contrary to popular belief, house music, as all popular musical genres, was created by Black Americans. House music got really, really associated with Europe. And Europeans. It's extremely popular in Europe, but house music was not created in Europe. It was not created by Giorgio Moroder, which is like I think his last name is pronounced Moroder. If it's not, you can feel free to correct me, which is like a really popular misconception. House music was created in the 1980s in Chicago, predominantly pioneered by the DJ Frankie Knuckles, who's known as the godfather of house music. Similar to how drill music got like really associated with the UK, but yet drill music was created by Black Americans in Chicago as well. And you guys know I have a ton of videos on, there being a real issue with anti-Blackness and especially anti-Black American sentiment. And this like, we love Black American culture, but we hate Black bodies, right? We hate Black American bodies. So we love the music, we love the culture, and yet there's this like continuous cycle. We saw it happen with jazz, we saw it happen with blues, we saw it happen with rock and roll. It also happened with house music, this continuous cycle of the stripping away of the roots and the origin and the creation of the genre and sort of attributing it to something else. But yes, house music came out of the LGBT dance club scene of Chicago in the 1980s. Earlier this year, I also did a hidden figure on Kelly Cahan, who was also a really foundational and pioneering Black American woman DJ during this time period that also really helped to move the genre along and increase its popularity. Cahan was originally from Detroit, and there's also but she used to travel regularly to Chicago, as we talked about in the Black Americans Extras. When I was in Detroit and Chicago are sister cities with a lot of interchangeable culture. And other DJs and producers from Chicago that helped pioneer the genre, along with Frankie Knuckles, were Ron Hardy, Jesse Saunders, Chip E. Steve Hurley, Farley Funk, Marshall Jefferson, and Future. Not our Future, a different producer named Future. So I'm just going to read you guys a little bit. House music originated from a Chicago club called The Warehouse, which existed from 1977 to 1983. Clubbers to The Warehouse were primarily Black, who came to dance to music played by the club's resident DJ, Frankie Knuckles. I also want to mention again, like as I said in my Hidden Figures, please check out this Hidden Figures on Kelly Cahan. She also held a residency at The Warehouse as well. Frankie Knuckles, who fans refer to as the Godfather of House. Frankie began the trend of splicing together different records when he found that the records he had weren't long enough to satisfy his audience of dancers. After The Warehouse closed in 1983, the crowd went to Knuckles' new club, the Power Plant, while the club was later renamed into Music Box, with Ron Hardy being the resident DJ. House has had a large impact on the pop music scene, especially dance music. And again, like I said, I can remember in the early 2000s, up sort of until the 2010s, when like dance music, this like house, like Rihanna, We Found Love is like a prime example. Music was popping, like, and a lot of it though was like David Guetta, however you pronounce his name, and like Calvin Harris, and then a lot of it Daft Punk, a lot of it was like white and like European, and it got like really associated with these like white producers. It was incorporated by major international pop artists, including Janet Jackson with Together Again, Madonna, Vogue, Kylie Minogue, etc. House music has remained popular in radio and in clubs while retaining a foothold on the music scene across the globe. From its beginnings in the Chicago club and local radio scene, house music expanded internationally to London and Sweden, then to other American cities, and becoming a worldwide phenomenon. And again, it got really associated with like European music because like house music is super fucking popular in Europe. Like it's super fucking popular. Again, something that a lot of the music history books and websites and, you know, all that don't like to mention is that, again, house music, though, came out of the Chicago LGBT scene. A lot of these clubs where the music was being pioneered and a lot of the DJs and producers were LGBT, and the parties themselves were LGBT, and a lot of the party goers were also LGBT. And as the sound spread, we also got these kind of different branches that formed kind of simultaneously. So again, you have Chicago house, which is kind of again like the birthplace. You have Detroit house because they have a shared culture, but then you also have Baltimore house music, which again is what I grew up listening to. And you also have New Jersey house music. And I would also say that all of these, Chicago and Detroit house music is very, very similar. To me, it's like almost the same. But Baltimore house music has a different type of sound, and so does New Jersey house music. They all kind of like developed simultaneously, but with this almost like the flavor of the city getting put into the music. Like I would say, for example, that Baltimore house music is a lot more techno. It's a lot more techno. It's a lot more electronic sounding. It's quicker. And I would say that it's more of like a like that. Meanwhile, I would say that like New Jersey house music, which to me is more similar to what the kind of music that Azealia Banks makes, being from New York. New Jersey music is like a little bit more vibey. It's like a little bit more slowed down. It's like a little bit more chill. And New Jersey house is kind of the music that right now is having a moment in the mainstream. And I feel like that's a really important distinction to make. Like it's not just like house music. It's specifically New Jersey house. I would say the music of the early 2000s leading up to the 2010s was closer to Baltimore house music. What's popping right now with the Drake and Beyonce's most recent album, and I would probably even say the Ungodly Hour, which I think was like the first track that really was a more of a mainstream house track for what we're seeing right now. Oh, and let me also say that I did like the Beyonce song a lot. My first thought though was like, man, I wish Chloe would drop something like this. Like something like this would sound so good coming from Chloe, like her voice and the lyrics and the themes and the message. Like it reminded me of Ungodly Hour. But anyways, that's more the New Jersey house, the New Jersey club music. That's the more vibey, the more slowed down. And I also have to give a shout out to South Florida. You guys know I live in South Florida. I don't know if the music of South Florida, especially Broward County, is specifically considered house music, but to me, it's like a baby of house music. Like this sped up, gosh, how do I describe it? Like one of my favorite Broward tracks is like Beam Ah, and it's like beam ah, beam ah, beam ah, beam ah, beam, beam, beam. Like that to me, it sounds like house music. And I would also say it's like a baby. It's like a baby. Like Broward, I guess you just call it Broward music. I'm not sure if it has a name. If you guys know, please let me know the name. But also bounce music, which is from New Orleans, which is where Big Freedia, who's on this Beyonce track, is from. I would even say that like bounce music is like almost a little baby of house. That's like not to disrespect New Orleans or Louisiana or anything like that, but again, like the beats, the counts, the cadence, the tempo, the bass lines, the more mechanical beat, it to me is like a progeny of house music, which house music, very similar to rap and hip hop, which came later, grew out of again the mixing and the speeding up of these like disco dance songs that people wanted to dance to. I grew up listening to "It's some hoes in this house, it's some hoes in this house, some hoes in this house," which it kind of fucking bothers me that now that shit is associated with that shitty ass fucking WAP song, because they sampled it. That was a house song that they sampled. Like, house has been really bubbling in the mainstream for the last few years now, and now it's kind of like reached that peak, that tipping point, and it's bubbling over. But I'm just going to read you guys a little bit about Frankie Knuckles. Frankie Knuckles and his friend Larry Levin, who was another foundational creator of the genre, began frequenting discos as teenagers during the 1970s. While studying textile design at FIT, Knuckles and Levin began working as DJs, playing soul, disco, and R&B at two of the most important early discos, the Continental Bass and the Gallery. In the late 1970s, Knuckles moved from New York City to Chicago, where his old friend Robert Williams was opening what became the nightclub called Warehouse. When the club opened in Chicago in 1977, he was invited to play on a regular basis, which enabled him to hone his skills and style. The style was a mixture of disco classics, usually indie label soul, the occasional rock track, European synth, and all manner of rarities, which would all eventually codify as house music. The style of music now known as house was named after a shortened version of the club name, The Warehouse. Knuckles was so popular that The Warehouse, initially a members-only club for largely black gay men, began attracting straighter, whiter crowds, who then became associated with house music. You see where I'm going with this? Like, and even now to this day, like, this is something that Azealia Banks said she really struggled with in her career, of people telling her, you're making this white music, you're making this like white rave music, or this white party music, or this like white gay music. And she's like, no, this is my music, this is my people's music. Black Americans created this shit. We created this shit. And then again, as time went on, the genre really took off. It spread to different cities. We got different versions that kind of came and became associated with different cities that got a very prominent house, club, electro, techno, dance culture. And then it really became super popular in Europe, where it kind of just ended up becoming associated with like a white European crowd and a white crowd. And it's really cool to me to see, again, as somebody that grew up listening to house music because of the region that I grew up in, it's really cool to me to see, I mean, like, it was cool to me, like, the first time, not the first time, because, like, I don't really remember obviously, I don't remember, like, the 80s when, like, it was first being invented and it was first popping, but, like, all of us know house songs from the 90s, like, you know, Crystal Waters, and like house was very, very popular in the 90s. Like I remember like my mom listening to house music, listening to Together Again by Janet Jackson, which is like a house song, you know. It was mainstream. It had a mainstream moment in the 90s. But I do remember the mainstream moment that came back around in like the early 2000s and 2010s of like the house techno dance sort of moment. And it's just like really cool to see it circle back around again, though, with a focus, what feels like a serious focus on, more so on Black artists and Black American artists, not Drake, because he's a Canadian. You know, like I said, I'm gonna include the link to the Genius. You know, I personally feel like Drake is just a wave rider, like that's just me. But you know, like with Beyonce releasing what's basically a house song with Big Freedia on it, I thought was like really cool, and less of this like, again, I like seeing the more New Jersey style, less influence on like the European DJs and the white DJs. And something else that I did also want to say though is that even though we are seeing with this current house resurgence more Black artists and Black American artists being associated with it, house music has also become really, really popular on TikTok. And you guys know how I feel about TikTok. I fucking hate TikTok. I feel like TikTok exists literally to like strip fucking context and attribution and things. Like it's like a cultural appropriation like fucking vortex to me. And we are seeing house music being called TikTok music. I have seen this. And so that's also kind of the flip side of it coming back around into the mainstream, I would say, for this like third time, is that it's being like pushed through this like TikTok meat grinder of like, it's TikTok music, it's Gen Z music. And, you know, there is a little bit of the same push to like strip it of the attribution, especially songs like Jersey Anniversary, which is a remix of the song Hey Baby by Hurricane Chris, Anniversary by Tony. Do you know what today is? It's our anniversary. Anyways, and also Beyonce. So it's kind of funny that there's also like a full circle moment with Beyonce releasing this song Break My Soul, but of just like not wanting to attribute it to those Black artists, because like with TikTok you can just like, it's a sound, and you know, just strip it away of everything. And so I do think that's something to be wary of as we kind of go into this third mainstream wave of house music becoming popular again. Love seeing Azealia Banks hopefully finally start to get some of her just due in the mainstream for the role that she has played in continuing to create excellent, amazing house tracks. Go listen to Broke with Expensive Taste if you haven't heard it. Miss Camaraderie, okay? It's just like, it's nice, you know, and to also sort of see the LGBT influence being honored as well, because that's something that for a long time has been swept up under the rug. So I just wanted to do this video, like, you know, like I said, I haven't listened to the Drake song, I like the Beyonce song, but I wanted to do this video a little bit more on the history of the genre and sort of how I feel about the genre like now coming back around. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I know I haven't done a video like this in a while, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. There will be tons of links and information in the description box. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace. Black Americans created everything you love.